The Institute of World Affairs at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee presents International Focus, a weekly discussion of the people and events behind today's global headlines. Support provided by Milwaukee Public Television and the UWM Center for International Education. Now here's your host, Doug Savage.
Welcome to International Focus. In an exercise in state theater mounted on a grand scale, Chinese leader Xi Jinping recently presided over a display of military muscle that included over 12,000 troops and hundreds of tanks and missiles on parade in Tiananmen Square. Officially, the event commemorated the 70th anniversary of the Japanese defeat in World War II, or the Anti-Fascist War, as it's referred to in Beijing. On a deeper level, however, the parade provides insights into both the fears and ambitions of the Chinese government. To help us put the pageantry and muscle flexing in context, we're fortunate to be joined today by a renowned scholar of Chinese history and politics who has just returned from Beijing. David Buck is Emeritus Professor of History at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, where he established himself as one of the nation's preeminent China scholars. Fluent in Mandarin and present in China as the parade took place, he's here to offer a unique insider's view of the event. Dave Buck, welcome to International Focus.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be back with you again.
Well, pleasure to have you back. I assume you got a little rest before coming on?
I did. I had a cold. Picked it up in Beijing, but seems to be under control now.
Very good. Well, we could start. We just got a few images from the parade. If you just want to offer some comments here as we go through them.
Well, this was really an incredibly large parade on a scale that really was staggering, and it was broadcast all over the nation. I happened to be a few hundred miles away in Qingdao, waiting to get on an airplane to fly to Beijing. The flight was delayed because of all the airplanes and helicopters that were going to be in the air. So, but in the waiting hall in this magnificent new airport, a huge new airport in the city of Qingdao, there must have been 40 TV monitors, and around most of them, there were groups of people standing or sitting, watching very closely what was going on. So, and after it was over, the rebroadcast began. And as long as I was there, and I'm sure today, if you turn on your TV in any place in China, you can see a replay of this parade, which went on for about 2 hours. These are some of the missiles that on their missile carriers, on their mobile missile carriers. I'm afraid I don't know the specific purpose of each of these missiles, but one of them that attracted a lot of attention was a missile that is specifically designed to destroy aircraft carriers. And there's only one country that runs a lot of aircraft carriers. So it was very clear that although the victory being celebrated was against the Japanese, that these weapons really had a purpose to help defend against any actions by the United States.
And some of these weapons have been seen for the first time, right?
Yes.
This is parade. So
yes.
This is a coming out party.
And the troops were very smart looking. They were very carefully drilled. They marched in unison. They did a not quite a goose step, but certainly a very exaggerated march was the style and here we see Xi Jinping in the center, the president with his wife to his side, and Vladimir Putin. And Putin was the leading foreign guest. Noticeably, he stood on the platform to Xi Jinping's right and the actual viewing platform, and you knew he was there, but in the images that came over the TV, you didn't see him. You just saw Xi Jinping, and Xi Jinping here. Xi Jinping is in a Western suit with a blue tie. But during the actual parade, he was wearing a dark, I would say, very dark navy blue Mao suit, finely tailored. He was looking very, very good. Yeah.
So there's a lot to unpack in that that little introduction. First of all, this question of who really was the parade's audience, and I'm sure that operates on several levels.
Well, I think the biggest audience was the Chinese people, and this was a all-out nationalistic display meant to stir the hearts of every Chinese and make them proud, make them feel that China which has emphasized in its education how China has been humiliated for ever since the middle of the 19th century. You wouldn't feel any of that in this parade. So you would be tremendously proud, and I think that is that's the message, that basic message that got over to almost everyone in China.
So how did it play? I mean, you were watching Chinese people watching it,
and they were, and the majority of them were happy and showed pride. That really did the same kind of thing that we see in patriotic displays in any country, but this was such a huge display, and they really hadn't had one for this kind of a display for years and years. So, and the weaponry and the equipment was so advanced that I think it made Chinese people feel very proud.
So that brings up a point. I mean, why now? Typically these happen on sort of 10-year intervals of, the party putting them on, that sort of thing. This is kind of an off year for a parade like this, isn't it?
It is, but for some reason they chose this 70th anniversary, this victory, and that's all kind of strange, because in all of the coverage that was there, the actual surrender of Japan occurred not on the 3rd of September, but on the 2nd of September in Tokyo Bay on the decks of the USS Missouri. General MacArthur and Admiral Nimitz, I'm sure we've all seen that in our own patriotic displays. No pictures of that. None. I saw none of that. And the actual surrender of the Japanese army in China occurred on September 9th, when the Japanese general for Central China, General Okamura, surrendered to General He Ying-chin, one of Chiang Kai-shek's assistant generals, in Nanjing. No pictures of that either.
And that's a bit of sort of revisionism as well, right? I mean, it was in fact the KMT and Chiang Kai-shek's forces that had much more of a role than sort of the precursors to the eventual Chinese government.
Yes. However, the coverage of in addition to the parade, the majority of programming on television and in my hotels, there were probably 20 to 30 channels in every place that I was staying, and they were running a lot of war films, showing stories of heroes, Chinese heroes in particular, and they allowed that the nationalists had a role in this. They certainly did, but it was the Communist Party that was emphasized the most.
So why now? Why not? On more of a usual cycle. I mean, what do you think the thinking was inside the party and in Mr. Xi's
I think
mind?
that they want to show that China is both wealthy and powerful, and people in China have a real sense of wealth these days. I mean, it's amazing. People have have fine cars, a lot of foreign brands of cars. Everybody's got a cell phone, and they're even more addicted to cell phones than Americans are, and people feel prosperous, so this was an indication is that we're not only prosperous, but we're strong. And the source of our strength, the strength, is the Communist Party. So this was a very important message that communism and the Communist Party is what has made China strong and wealthy.
So how did the stock market downturn, which preceded the
Yes.
parade, just by a few days, play into that message?
It didn't play at all. It didn't play at all. Now, some of my acquaintances in China, I asked them about how they'd done in the stock market, and they had been playing the stock market, and their shares had gone way up, and they had gone way down, and they were very disappointed. And I was interviewed by some reporters, and I tried to emphasize that people shouldn't get too upset. That's what stock markets do. They go up and down. But the news paid little, if any, attention to the stock market.
Well, I mean, if part of the legitimacy of the government is based on this sort of omnipotence of we control all facets of life and we do it very well, that's probably not a message you want out there, right?
Right. Well, and you have to remember that the numbers of people who actually are involved in the stock market is much less than here in the United States. It's a small percentage, probably 12 to 15% of the people. So the great majority of the people have no connection with the stock market, and it was very hard for me to judge if people were cutting back their consumption. I mean that I really couldn't tell. I think some of that is happening, but on the other hand, when I was with my Chinese friends, nobody was saying, well, I don't know if we really should do this. They were spending freely. They really were.
No dessert for you, Bob.
That's right. No, they didn't say that at all. I mean, they were, as usual, Chinese people are enormously generous with their guests.
Well, I want to broaden it out to sort of the regional message that the parade was sending. But first, we're going to take a short break. We'll be right back.
The Institute of World Affairs presents our community with a range of public programs relating to global issues, U.S. foreign policy, and the world economy. For more information about the Institute of World Affairs, call 414-229-3220 or visit our website at www.iwa.uwm.edu.
Welcome back. We're taking a look at the recent parade in Beijing with David Buck. Well, David, before we left, we were talking a little bit about sort of the deep cultural underpinnings of an event like this. And, you've shared a slide with us from a very ancient text. Maybe we can take a look at this.
Yes.
Rich country, strong army. How does that play into this parade?
Well, I think, to me, this is the real message of the of this whole parade, and this is a very famous text in modern politics, both in Japan and in China. In Japan, in the late 19th century, when the Meiji Restoration occurred, this is what the Japanese, they took this same 4-character phrase because they knew the same texts, and it became the rallying cry of Japan. We're going to become a rich country with a strong army. Now, they did that, and they used it very much in the 19th century sense of imperialist aggression against their neighbors. China uses it today, and it underlays, I think, what's going on in China, because they know they're a rich country. People still say we're just a developing country, and when I tell them, you're not a developing country, you're a rich country. They really are. There's just no doubt about it. They have problems, and but we don't need to go into that. But basically, this is a rich country, and this display proves they have a strong army. And if we can go back to that slide, this slide appears in a 3rd century text called the Book of Lord Shang. And it said, and I have translated this, and I'm sure everybody would agree with my translation. In the past, the strength of the state's ruler lay in having a rich country and a strong army. Well, who's the state's ruler today? It's Xi Jinping. And Xi Jinping is the center of things in China. He is taking an enormously large role. He was in the center of this whole parade. He was on the podium. He was down waving to the troops. He was exercising leadership in a style that was reminiscent of Mao Zedong and Deng Xiaoping. There's no collective leadership here. This was Xi Jinping in charge. He's reflecting exactly the idea of this 3rd century BC text. So it's a Chinese tradition and I think it has a resonance in China, that this is the kind of way that China should be, and it is, and that all the shame and humiliation of the past is over. We're now a great country, and we can do almost anything we want.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Xi's governance so far. I mean, you alluded to this, that he's got a very different style than some of his immediate predecessors.
Yes. Deng Xiaoping, who was really the man who turned China around, he truly did, and really opened up China. And my favorite saying of his was, well, if you open things up, if you open the door, you'll get a few flies inside. So he wasn't worried about a little corruption or some bad practices. And China really took off under him. Now, Xi Jinping is very different. He's really cracking down on corruption and things that he and the Communist Party don't want to see. Deng Xiaoping also said, we don't have to go out and impress everybody. Let's be quiet but not Xi Jinping. He's right out front. He wants everybody to know that he's in charge and that he's the leader, and it's a new era in China under his leadership. The past leaders after Deng Xiaoping, none of them acted in this fashion, and much of this is a reflection of Xi Jinping's leadership. Xi Jinping was one of these people who was sent down to the countryside and worked during the Cultural Revolution era out in the countryside. And when he came back, he married the daughter of a Chinese ambassador to England. They were married a few years, and she said, I don't want to live like this. This is too tough. I want to go back to England. And she did. Xi Jinping's brother lives in Hong Kong. Xi Jinping has another brother who lives in the United States, I believe. Xi Jinping has stayed in China, stayed totally loyal to the Chinese Communist Party, and become a huge power holder in China. He's a remarkable man, and he has utmost faith in his own ability and his own leadership. I will say it's hard for us to tell just how cautious he is, because what they've been doing in the South China Sea and building all these bases in the South China Sea is really it's hard to defend, but he has. I think they are drawing back a little bit on the enmity towards Japan. I know that this is celebrating the defeat over Japan, but there wasn't what I would call a lot of present day Japan bashing that I saw. The military might was really much more to display to the United States how strong they are. So, and I think the people in our defense establishment are paying very, very close attention to what they did displayed in the parade.
Well, but in the region we also have in Japan, under Mr. Abe, a government that is not exactly shrinking violets themselves. So
No.
how do you think the parade was viewed by the Abe administration?
Oh, I think they saw it as an assault upon him. And again, it's so much of Abe's personal history that his grandfather was both an official under the Japanese War administration and then became a prime minister under the Reconstruction. And he's very conservative. He's a very conservative Japanese who doesn't wants to maintain Japan's purity and Japan's position. But the reality is that China is just much, much stronger today, and Abe would like Japan to be able to stand on its own. But the reality is that they're allied with the United States and have been since 1945, so we're very much tied together.
So we're getting a little afield from the parade itself,
Yeah.
but an issue like changing the Japanese Constitution.
I don't think that will happen. I don't think they'll change the Constitution. No, I think there's too much resistance to that. I certainly hope so.
Well, so talk a little bit about, with this being military in its orientation, Xi's relationship to the military versus some of his predecessors.
Well, what he's done is the military used to operate very much on their own. I think that under Deng Xiaoping, he had good control of the military, but under Jiang Zemin and the later leaders of China, in the interim, I don't think they had as full control. Remember that there was an American Secretary of Defense who went to China on a visit, and they sprang a new airplane on him, and it appeared that the top leadership didn't know that this was going to happen, and also the armed forces were a center of enormous corruption. In fact, corruption remains rampant in China. I heard this little story while I was there, that there was a department store that issues cards in various denominations of money, and I was told, well, if you in the past, this person said, not now, but in the past, if you wanted to get something, you'd get one of these, you'd load it up with whatever you thought would be appropriate amount of money, and then you just present it to the person that you wanted to influence or buy, and you'd seal the deal, and they could go ahead and use the card and buy whatever they wanted. But now there's a real fear in China about that sort of thing, and there have been several generals who've been cashiered. And high-ranking generals who've been cashiered because of corruption. So I think, and this is a big drive of Xi Jinping, because he knows that corruption cuts right to the heart of the legitimacy of the Communist Party and the military. So he's continued this drive. A lot of people thought that no, he'd give it up after he got some of the tigers, as they're referred to.
Well, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you for really unique insights. Welcome back once again to our viewers. We'll see you next time on International Focus.
For information about the Institute of World Affairs and its many programs, or to become a member of the Institute, call 414-229-3220 or visit us at our website,